I'm Henry Gordon Smith. I'm the CEO of Agritecture, and I have the pleasure of being your moderator today. And for today's panel, we're going to talk about fossil-free cultivation. This is one of a two-part fossil-free cultivation discussion that's happening, so stick around. Immediately after this, we're going to talk about another type of fossil fuel cultivation, fossil fuel-free cultivation. And this is about the road to zero-footprint greenhouse production. We know that the horticulture world actually does use a certain amount of fossil fuels through production, but obviously our aspirations are to make those fossil-free and net zero. So we're going to talk about how that's possible, the technologies, the policies, etc. And we have two awesome speakers here. We've got Danny here.
Thank you.
We're just going to stand. Let's just stand this whole panel.
Sure. Why not? Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I kind of fall asleep in this couch sometimes because it's very, very comfortable.
Okay.
But Danny, who are you? And you can sit.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Thank you, Henry. So I'm from the Westland area, and I'm a director at Aardwarmte Vogelaer, which is a beautiful geothermal project in the Netherlands.
Where is it?
In the Westland area.
The geothermal project in the Westland.
Yeah.
I hear there's some greenhouses there.
There's a lot of greenhouses
Just a few, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then we also have Martin here, and you're from the...
I'm from the greenhouse industry. I was living close by to where Danny's now doing his thing in geothermal. I have several roles in the greenhouse industry and the energy, and actually I'm a technical lobbyist, in short.
Technical lobbies. And you work at the Geothermal Association.
Yes, I work for the International Geothermal Association as a global market manager. That's all about direct use of geothermal, so you can think of heating, but also about cooling. And I also work for the Greenport West Holland, which is about the integration of the energy system in the province of South Holland.
Okay, Danny, explain geothermal energy as though you're speaking to a 7-year-old.
Okay. So basically, a geothermal installation is a producing well and an injection well. So we have two wells, which go to a depth where there is a reservoir, where there is hot water. And you pump the hot water up. You extract the heat at the surface, you extract the heat from the hot water, and you pump the cool water, so you extract the heat, you pump the cool water down to the same reservoir again, and the heat, you can utilize it in whatever way you see fit. So what we do with the heat, so we harvest the heat, we give it to a heat network, and we transport it to growers.
So it's like a big infrastructure project, and it delivers that heat to growers across the Westland area.
Exactly.
How many growers benefit from this particular project in the Westland?
So for our project, we have 14 different companies at 18 locations, and we're doubling that right now.
With the same infrastructure, or you have to build more infrastructure?
We have to build a little more infrastructure, yeah.
And like, do you ever put a geothermal... Like, how small can it be? Can it be for a single operation, or is it always like a big mega project?
There is definitely a minimum to scale that you have to have. I wouldn't know the exact scale. I know one company that goes a lot less deep, which produces a lot less heat. So he utilizes all the heat himself, and together with his neighbor. So that's 2 growers.
And explain to us why this is fossil-free.
So you extract the heat from the earth using a pump, using only electricity, which is by definition then, of course, because you inject it back.
You're not burning anything.
You inject it back, you're not burning anything. That's one thing. You inject it back into the same reservoir where it takes years to again reheat, which you can then utilize again after decades. So therefore it's a renewable cycle.
Like always, or just decades?
We haven't been to the point where we've seen our own water. Nowhere in the world.
So it's never run out. So it's
Not
probably
yet.
renewable.
Not yet. No.
Okay.
There's
Exciting.
probably some point, maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years.
Yeah. But not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. And Danny, how many Dutch growers are utilizing this awesome technology?
Yeah, so I had to look up the numbers again. And I think that about 200 different growers are getting their heat through geothermal installation.
200 growers, which in the Netherlands, those growers could be massive.
Yeah.
Is there a percentage?
So the average scale of a grower that is that utilizes geothermal is 11 hectares.
Okay. Great. And
So,
Martin, you work on this internationally. What is it like internationally versus the Netherlands with geothermal for horticulture operations?
In general, I should say the Netherlands are in the top of utilizing geothermal for heating greenhouses. But you have, let's say, common places for geothermal like Turkey, but also Iceland, western part of the USA, in which the direct use of geothermal for heating for greenhouse is also popular. And it's getting more and more traction also in other countries. And you can also think like countries like Kenya, but also Middle America, New Zealand, Korea, where it starts in taking traction.
Are there parts of the world where you can't do it?
Of course, there needs to be a proper aquifer around. So there need to be water in the aquifer. And depending on the depth and the temperature gradient and the amount of water, it will more or less decide what capacity of your geothermal source can be. So your question about how many greenhouses per doublet really is connected, of course, to the size of the aquifer and this capacity thing.
And does it use water? Like, do you lose water through the process, or is it?
No, it doesn't lose any water.
You don't lose any water.
No, you more or less put the same water which you get it to soil. You put the same water back into the aquifer, which is needed to keep the environment in the subsoil as stable as possible.
And it's mostly focused on just heat. It's not electrification. It's not electrified energy. It's heat energy.
You can also think about cascading systems, and let's say all those volcanic regions on the Earth are known for geothermal, and their geothermal is mostly used for producing power. But cascading that with also the direct use, of course, makes sense. So you see different developments in the world. And the other one is also about storing both heating and cooling in aquifers, which in the end is also geothermal.
And so growers are doing this because in cold climates, a lot of the places you mentioned, there's fluctuating temperatures, they need the heat, right? There's a question here about the main energy uses, so want to help the audience understand which part of the energy mix this is solving. Just heat. In most cases.
For instance, the system is called aquifer thermal energy storage, and you actually cool with your geothermal source in summertime. So you cool your greenhouse, and you actually harvest the heat, and you store this heat from summertime in the aquifer and use it again in wintertime. So you can both cool and heat with the same system. And that system is much more applicable for smaller companies, but you can also use it in households.
Great, so it's a year-round benefit.
That's true, yeah.
That's exciting. And so, like, what are the costs to the grower, Danny? I mean, does it cost them more money? Is it cheaper?
So we devised a pricing scheme, which is, of course, aligned with the subsidy that we receive. So the system is designed that the cost of sustainable heat, let's say in the Netherlands, is always lower than the alternative.
And that's a Dutch government incentive that makes that happen.
Yes.
So demand must be increasing for growers that want to be powered by geothermal if it's cheaper.
That's part of a bigger discussion, of course, which role it can play in the mix and where you're situated in the Netherlands. Because, like Martin already said, geothermal is not available for everyone because you need to have a good aquifer, you need to have enough skill.
How many are there in the Netherlands, Martin? How many geothermal production centers are there in the Netherlands?
In the Netherlands, I think we have about 25, maybe 30 doublets. 30. And if you actually speak about Berg costs, so capex and opex together, yeah, we more or less can think about 50 euros per megawatt. But that's a rule of thumb, because some can really produce very cheap, and other ones just will be more expensive. So this regulating scheme from the government is needed to keep every doublate up and running on an economic way.
Yeah, very interesting. And so, with the energy crisis that has happened, I guess it's not totally gone, but has that also stimulated a lot more interest in your work in geothermal energy?
Definitely.
Especially because you have a stable price.
Yeah.
So it's another incentive beyond the renewable energy sort of fossil-free part of it is just the stability of the
Price stability.
price.
Exactly.
See, there must be a lot more interest in it, no?
Yeah, we see a growing interest.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. But there's also growers who started thinking, hey, what am I going to do the next 5 years? Am I going to still do it myself? Do I have someone next in line to take over the company? So it has accelerated a lot of things.
Yeah. A lot of discussions on that transfer of the older farmers to the newer farmers in general. And I'm just curious, like how much has geothermal advanced in the past 10 years? Is it more efficient? Is it just sort of the same technology? And what are some of the innovations that are making it better?
Yeah, so in the past 10 years, I think, so we started in the Netherlands in 2007 with the first project, and then year on year, maybe 2 or 3 projects each year. So what we've learned in the past 10 years is a better corrosion control. So the first projects that started, they paid a lot of learning money. They encountered all sorts of problems, mostly technical. So the water was a lot more corrosive. We found unexpected gas. We found unexpected oil. All those sort of things that have been tackled, right? Basically, we found a way to use it, to work around it, to use different materials. So yeah, we've come a long way. I think the installations that are there now, they are really future-proof.
And regarding the subsidies that make the price parity, are there any other incentives or subsidies? Is there EU money? Is it all Dutch money for this? Where's the money coming from, and what other incentives are there?
Well, like Danny said, there's a subsidy scheme which is more or less related to the compensation to the fossil price. Well, you've asked about the learning points. I think the most, let's say, interesting learning point in the energy system is how to integrate geothermal. And this geothermal in the Netherlands has this high capacity, so you need actually a heating grid to supply the heat over your region. So this development of this heating grid thinking is starting all over Europe, but also in the northern part of the world, probably also Canada, the US, but also China, Korea. That heating grids are necessary in highly concentrated areas with both cities but also greenhouse areas. So the infrastructure, together with the social, let's say, acceptance of geothermal, and also, let's say, the system integration is, I think, a key point from the last 10 years also.
Of improvements that have happened. But there's also incentives to get the projects built, right? Because they need more capacity. And
of course, well, you have normally the mining industry, the oil and gas industry, was earning a lot of money with drilling for oil and gas. This mining industry is also now on a global scale changing over to also renewables, and you can think of storing hydrogen, storing CO2, but also drilling for geothermal. So there's like the supply chain for geothermal is also developing rapidly.
That's exciting. And Danny, why wouldn't a grower use geothermal? Seems like a pretty big no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say it is available in their market.
Yeah.
Because I understand that's not available everywhere in every region in the Netherlands.
Yeah, of course it's not so simple because it's a really capital-intensive investment.
But if I'm the grower, I buy it from the facility, right? I just buy it.
That's possible, yeah.
If I build my own, that's like a lot.
Sure, so let's say we have a neighbor who wants a geothermal. That's possible. The production installation needs to have heat available, needs to have produce available. So that's probably one of the basics. Yeah, you can. It's also you can also just have invested in other types. Maybe a new CHP, combined heat and power, which is also very lucrative at the moment for let's say for the foreseeable years, for year 3, and then you have your investment back. So that's quite a safe investment. Where geothermal is definitely a contract that you have to do for the long run. So maybe 5, 10, or 15 years.
And so combined heat and power solves the problem, the same problem, basically.
Partly for short term.
Partly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it has a good payback.
It definitely.
And like you said, if I do the geothermal route, I have to make this commitment to buy at this price. Okay. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. What else should people know about geothermal?
I think the success is about integration. Like geothermal, as Danny showed in the greenhouse in the Netherlands, is really like a typical baseload energy source. So it can provide heat over the whole year round. So it's not affected by weather changes or whatsoever. So it's very stable. But it means in general that you need some extra capacity in wintertime because your heat demand is higher. And this peak load is of course also needed to have your greenhouse in the air completely fossil free. So there is also a movement going on in which you can store your capacity from summertime. You store it just temporary over the season and to use it back in wintertime. So these developments will help to have a completely year-based curve in which the supply is connected to the demand. So these developments also in technical way, but also commercially, are very interesting to see. And next to that, I think also that this integration is also needed together with other renewables, for instance, like waste heat. And what Danny said, of course, your business model for geothermal should be stable because then your investment, your investors, your financiers are okay with it. But have to deal with other competitive energy sources is also a commercial and also a play of good balancing. So let's say if you have some cheap waste heat within 2 years and it can compete dramatically with the geothermal from your plant, you do not want to interfere that too much. So it's also building up like a new heat market, which is essential for the success both for geothermal and also waste heat.
So I want to understand this a little better. So you're saying that the peak load in the winter for some greenhouses, the geothermal can't supply it, or it struggles sometimes?
Maybe partly.
Because it's a sort of stable production that's happening.
Yeah, but I think
turn it up and down.
The development is that you more and more have like flexibility between different sources. So having only one CHP which can provide your heat over a year, I think we more and more have to think about renewable sources in which we can change depending of, let's say, the power of the gas or the hydrogen price, but also depending of the demand. So this flexible system is probably needed for every region for greenhouses all over the world, because this flexibility can more or less can deal with the changes in solar and wind, for instance.
Okay, so diversifying that mix is a more
diversification is very
resilient approach to this.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
And are the growers doing that? Are some of them buying geothermal, Danny, under the contracts, and then also getting other sources?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I guess the idea was like, you want to integrate this as part of the overall energy mix.
Yeah.
But if I'm getting a contract for geothermal, why would I buy wind or solar energy? Or why would I,
Depending on your demand as a grower. If geothermal is a base load, so it's something you can something that we supply year round.
But for peak,
at the same level. Exactly. So for peak demand, you need to have other options.
Okay. I mean, that makes it a little bit less appealing, right? Because you have to.
But your base load is still covered. So it's of course the heat that you need year round.
Okay, cool. And so, like, what does the future of this sector look like? What else is possible? Where is it going to go?
So Martin already gave a few.
Integration.
Exactly, integration of different production sources. So different suppliers are connecting. Also cascading. So for a grower, 40 degrees of heat is waste heat. But for newly built houses, it's perfect. So this cascading is something we really look into. Getting more supply. We of course have the cities of The Hague in the vicinity. We have we have Rotterdam. We have Delft. The heating network is just going to grow, and we're going to connect all those, and we're going to see exactly how that market is going to turn out.
Martin, any more thoughts on the future of this, or did you cover it?
Well, there is also a multi-useful geothermal development. So there are already geothermal wells in which also lithium is harvested from the groundwater, and lithium is used for producing batteries. So that's more or less an environmental way of producing lithium that's developed around Germany, but also on other places on Earth where geothermal in combination with lithium is really developing.
Interesting.
In Iceland, geothermal is used for storing CO2 in the subsoil. So you have all those combinations of both producing heat, producing power with geothermal, but in the same time having like sustainable mining development. So it's in the end, mining should also be sustainable, and using, for instance, geothermal heat because it's an end product of producing power by geothermal. I think it's about coupling those systems in which we use as much energy out of sustainable sources connected to the right application. So in the end, it's integrating, but it's also developing on not only greenhouse industry, but it's also for heating buildings or for cooling buildings. Those developments are really going on rapidly.
Yeah, I like the idea of, again, integrating the whole power system with the city as well as the farms, more circular system in that sense.
It's the system for local energy ownership. Of course, with solar you have local energy ownership, and with wind a bit, but the more you can produce in your own region, the less dependent you are from outside. So this is probably also one of the biggest drivers for growers, that they can control the base load for their heat demand, which is very interesting.
Yeah, great benefits to growers. Does our audience have any questions about geothermal? Yes, enthusiastic. I like it.
Ellie Niederhoff from New Zealand. I just would like to know the real definition. When you say geothermal, I expect that it is really hot water, say 95 degrees, because of volcanic activity. But I know in the Netherlands, and you explained that you cool the greenhouse in summer and pump warm water into the ground. And in winter, you pump up cold water, cool the greenhouse, and the lukewarm water goes back down in. Do you call that geothermal as well?
Yeah, so we have a few distinctions. We have a shallow geothermal, and we have deep geothermal, and then we have ultra deep geothermal. A shallow geothermal is, I think, up to 500 meters depth, or maybe 1,500 meters depth. And then we have deep geothermal, which goes from 1,500 to 4,000, and everything below 4,000 meters is ultra deep.
Well, Ellie, thank you for your question. I do not want to go into semantic things, but in general, I call it geothermal energy. So I'm more or less covered either for power, heating, or cooling.
But in the Dutch language, it's warmte-koude opslag.
Yeah, which is shallow.
And you don't have that in the English language.
Yeah, the warmte-koude opslag Dutch is aquifer thermal energy storage, ATES. That's more or less the abbreviation.
Oh yes, but geothermal energy, the real volcanic heat, is totally not usable for cooling a greenhouse. So there's a big distinction between one and the other.
That's true, yeah. You need special techniques to cool your greenhouse with water from 200 degrees. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And about the cost, I've always heard that even a test drill cost already $1 million. Would that be right?
It's depending of the depth, of course, and the
euros.
capacity, but the systems in the Netherlands are now that far that more or less your first well is more or less your test well, and it's already developed as a production or an injection well, so you still can need it afterwards. And with this first well, you more or less know that your aquifer is in right condition, so you can also do your financing of your second well.
But it means already 3 million euros gone. Three test drills is $3 million.
Yes, and there's more or less a system behind it because let's say the market for insurances cannot cover that. So there's a system from the government in which you can more or less hedge your risk on a market-based way.
Yeah, it also means when there's no subsidy, it's sort of inachievable for most countries.
No subsidy on the upfront tests or...
It's let's say this insurance thing isn't a subsidy, it's just an insurance thing in which the government can allow you, and you still have to pay for this insurance as a developer of this greenhouse system. But the insurance market itself isn't, let's say, doesn't want to cover this cost. So in the Netherlands, this governmental insurance scheme is more or less allowing regions which aren't, let's say, known yet for the subsoil. It still allows the operator to start drilling and to more or less do a financial close with it.
You mentioned different depths of geothermal available. And I assume you get different temperatures with different depths. Do you see more and more with closer to the surface, projects that are closer to the surface that are coupled with heat pumps, where there's a price balance between digging deeper and deeper versus just not going too deep and adding a heat pump to get the temperature right? Do you see that happening more often?
Yeah, let's say the aquifers in Western Europe are very good in this heating and cooling thing. And I think it's not only a way of cost price, but it's also about what kind of temperature do you need for your greenhouse. So conventional greenhouses, which aren't isolated so much, they have a high heat demand. And for sure, if you have a cooling demand, it's more and more interesting to have this ATIS up and running. So the more greenhouses will be isolated, the less high enthalpy geothermal will be needed. Or you can use more geothermal for a bigger acreage.
Last question?
Last question. I would be interested in, let's say, the temperature range which you need. Kind of, if you want to get close to the zero footprint thing, what temperature do you need to get from the ground to make that roughly, let's say, meaningful exercise?
Well, it's like I just answered. The more isolated your greenhouse is, you can use your greenhouse. You can heat your greenhouse in wintertime, for instance, with a highly isolated system with 40 degrees. So from the Netherlands system, you have to drill to about 1,200 meters. But that can, of course, be different in Vancouver. But the less isolated it is, the higher pipe temperature you need. So that's also connected to the crop. It's the configuration between your crop, your greenhouse, and your energy system.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's have a round of applause for our geothermal experts. Thank you, Danny.